NFT liquidity. I feel like people obviously roughly understand liquidity, like Bored Apes are super liquid because they're a popular thing, and so you're able to buy and sell them. But I feel like there's something bigger here when you say NFT liquidity. It's like this central thing. Can you define what you really mean by that?
Look, ultimately there's going to be a huge amount of scaling solutions coming out over the next 2 years. My strong belief is that Starkware is clearly the market leader in sort of fundamental ZK tech. What our job is to make sure that we build the best possible user experience and the best possible volume for this stuff. If you come to us, you should get more volume than anywhere else. And that's what we're obsessed with in every way, building for every application that's going to use NFTs. And so when you look at the way that NFTs are going to be traded, the best place to trade a gaming item or to sell a gaming item is going to be inside the game where you receive it. And the best place to buy is often going to be on NFT aggregator or where like power users are, or maybe on a deck building website, but it'll be in multi sort of contextual applications. And what our global order book does is it literally connects the trades or the buyers and sellers no matter where they trade. So someone can be in Illuvium overworld, they're just captured an alluvial and they want to sell it for $10. And they can do that listing inside the game. Just click a button and that will immediately propagate to every single marketplace that uses Immutable, from Rarible, Token Trove, GameStop, OpenSea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an incredible thing for folks to realize. That was like an unlock moment for me when I understood what you guys were doing there. Are other L2s doing that?
As far as I know,
or it's a point of distinction.
This is a big differentiator. This is what we're really focused on, right? And this differentiates us from blockchains. At the end of the day, is like obviously we compete with blockchains in deals like Solana and the other big L1s or sidechains. But the main point of differentiation we have is we're much more than just a blockchain. We're obviously a set of advisory tools and services for games, but we're also this connective tissue between any buyer and seller of any asset. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things over the next decade as we build out this entire like layer of tokenization over stuff, from gaming to finance to ownership of real stuff like houses or shoes.
Does this get into like cross roll-up liquidity? Because my feeling is like it's not just about having liquidity within IMX for what y'all are trying to build, but it's like there's a broader ecosystem you're playing into.
Precisely.
Can you explain this?
So the number one problem with scaling today, and why we literally even have these debates around this blockchain or this one, is that there is a trade-off every time you use a new scaling solution. You lose users, wallets, trades, and orders. All of this stuff has to be started from scratch. And so you lose the ecosystem benefits that make one preferable in the first place. The problem, though, is it's very, very hard to scale like any monolithic instance, even if it's a single L2, to the heights that we need in order to power like a world of NFTs being traded in a decade. And feasibly, it's 1 billion users, and they're trading stuff from gaming assets to finance to insurance options to houses to title to IP and music to their private data for Facebook or medical data that they're selling. Like, this is how we store unique value and trade it. There's going to be trillions of these traded, and that requires significant throughput. What our cross roll-up liquidity solution has done is we can create multiple L2s and even L3s. So creating roll-ups that roll up to an L2 as a settlement layer and then roll up to L1. And all of those can have unified liquidity. So we're not compromising on anything. Basically, the first kind of attempt at this, and the reason I'm really excited, Vitalik has talked about this for a long time, and what this will do is allow us to spin up dedicated scaling instances, even with different trade-offs. Say, like, you want slightly high security or whatever, based on your needs, and have all of that still share the network effects with everyone else. And this is what truly creates like the powerhouse of content on Ethereum.
So this is huge, and I have now spent enough time trying to understand this stuff, I think, to kind of grasp why this feels really big and why it makes me very bullish on Ethereum. But let me try and break it down and tell me if I have it roughly correct here, which is, you mentioned like even a monolithic L2 can't do this. What you're getting at is we need to have millions of transactions. You're referencing like medical records, like all the things that we're going to eventually want to have on chain. And it's like a shit ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And no one single chain is likely to be able to scale, or it's very hard to ask one single chain to scale to the point to handle all of that.
Yeah, or a single L2 instance.
Correct. So a single IMX, IMX one chain, or one. You're right, it's not chain, right? But one alone is probably, it's very hard to do that. Solana, which people like because again it has more TPS, it has more transactions that you can do than an Ethereum. But so one Solana chain alone, that's going to be very hard for Solana to do, and we can get into why Ethereum is better poised for this because of the decentralization piece. So that's going to be very hard for any one thing to do. And yet what you want, if you have multiple chains or you have multiple instances of an L2, what you lose is the fact that this easy liquidity where it's easy to trade between them. That's what you're trying to really solve for here, which is saying, okay, we are setting up the system and the capacity for lots of different instances of L2s to be built. And I think that's also fascinating because L2s, you can fork it pretty easily, right? And this gets into why does IMX have a competitive advantage even in theory, and we can talk about that.
And not today. I think it's pretty hard to build this stuff, but it absolutely, and in 5 years this stuff is going to be there'll be huge amounts of different scaling solutions, and there'll be, I think, serious advantages to the right ones, but ultimately what we think is most important is how can we create the platform by which we can cater to the demand while also not compromising on a single thing.
And this will allow Ethereum to scale tremendously while Ethereum...
Theoretically to millions of TPS.
And while letting Ethereum do what Ethereum does best, which is the security piece.
Precisely. And the network effect piece. There's hundreds of billions of dollars of ETH in people's pockets ready to be spent on digital stuff. And we don't lose that if we do this. And that is what is magnificent about this, is we're scaling to countless new businesses while all of them add network effects to every single other partner on the Immutable network. And that is what I'm really stoked about.
And what's more is network effects on Ethereum specifically also lead to greater security, because the more people you have coming on, the more people you're ultimately going to have running nodes, and that adds to the security of Ethereum.
Precisely, yeah.
I feel like we have to, and try to do this here of, this is getting into the modular blockchain theory.
Yep.
And I think what you have here is you have this trilemma. You have security, decentralization, and scalability. And you're trying to get all three of these things to happen. And you have chains like Solana that are compromising the decentralization piece of this for the other two. And you have something like Ethereum, which is strong on the decentralization piece and is now trying to almost delegate out the other two pieces. And that's where you get into modular. So you're making these three key pieces modular by having them handled in different ways.
Precisely. The settlement layer is handling
really?
Security.
You can understand this stuff, and it's so hard to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is that it is not you get 10 skill points to spend on the scalability trilemma and Solana is to spend them all on scale. ZK rollups just have way more skill points than everyone else. It's a much better solution. It solves the trilemma in a better way. And with the introduction of this cross rollup liquidity platform, what we're fundamentally solving for is scale at infinite distance while maintaining volume users and wallets along every single stage. So when World of Warcraft or when Fortnite comes on board, suddenly all of those users, those hundreds of millions of wallets, are ready to spend that money on any other game on L2, or to trade and buy assets from any other L2 scaling instance without a single loss of security or without a single loss in liquidity and connectivity.
And this is why, to get to where we started on all of this, you're quite bullish on Ethereum and think we'll probably end up with Ethereum dominant, because it's why we don't have a whole bunch of Twitters. In many ways, the network effects are there, and we have truth, right? But
yes.
But if the network effects become strong enough in one place, it inevitably just
and
becomes
Ethereum
dominant.
is not opinionated about any.
No, it's a protocol. It's
Precisely.
not a platform.
So we're not going to even see the balkanization that you see with right-wing alternatives to social media, which have different policy implementations. There is the policy implementation is very clear, and it's very unopinionated about anything other than what the protocol does.
But if I have a Gmail account and you have an AOL account, we can still email each other.